They placed me at table 12, tucked behind a floral arrangement, large enough to conceal a getaway car. It was clear I was the embarrassing relative they hoped would simply be absorbed by the scenery. I offered a placid smile. This charming young man had no idea what kind of tempest was about to descend upon him. In 3 days, he'd appear at my door with documents that would give me a reason to laugh for weeks. What Julian Croft didn't understand was that this supposedly helpless widow was guarding some very expensive secrets. The morning began with such promise. I'd selected my outfit with the care of a battlefield general, a modest gray dress that whispered harmless, paired with my grandmother's pearls to project just enough dignity to sidestep pity. My hair was styled at my usual salon, nothing extravagant, just respectable enough for the mother of the bride. "Mom, you look acceptable," my daughter, Clara, said upon my arrival, her attention already splintered by some fresh crisis with the wedding planner. Acceptable. The word landed like a participation trophy for existing. I watched her move through the venue in my own great-grandmother's lace gown, the one truly beautiful heirloom our family had clung to through lean years. She was radiant, glowing with that infectious bridal energy that makes everyone else's problems feel distant. But as guests began to arrive, the day's social architecture became painfully clear. Julian's parents, the Crofts, swept in like visiting monarchs. His mother, Beatrice, was draped in enough diamonds to serve as an aviation beacon. She navigated the room with surgical precision, air-kissing the influential, while managing to look straight through me as if I were a piece of inconvenient furniture. "Excuse me," I said to a flustered usher, presenting my table card. "I think there's been a charming mistake. Table 12, ma'am. Right behind the decorative feature." Decorative feature. How diplomatic. I was being hidden behind enough flowers to outfit a state funeral. I found my designated exile, which afforded me a spectacular view of absolutely nothing but hibiscus and baby's breath. From my botanical prison, I watched the festivities unfold in a large mirror across the room. There I was, Eleanor Vance, 72 years of accumulated wisdom, set aside like yesterday's news. The ceremony itself was lovely, I'll give them that. Clara seemed to float down the aisle, a storybook princess, and Julian looked sharp in his tailored suit. But during the cocktail hour, I observed something fascinating about my new son-in-law. He possessed a whole collection of smiles, a megawatt beam for the obviously wealthy, a practiced politeness for the useful, and complete indifference for anyone who looked like they might need a favor instead of offering one. "Mrs. Vance," I turned to find Julian himself, deploying his most dazzling smile. The one I'd soon learn was reserved for people he was about to manipulate. "Isn't this just magical?" he asked, gesturing around the reception as if he'd personally choreographed the sunset. "You must be bursting with pride." "Oh, I'm practically vibrating with maternal joy," I replied, my tone sweeter than saccharin. "Though I must say, the view from here is incredibly educational." He either missed the acid in my voice or, like a seasoned politician, chose to ignore it. "I was hoping we could spend some quality time together soon, really get to know each other." "How refreshing. Most people handle that before the wedding, but I admire your commitment to reverse chronological order." That earned me a micro pause in his smile. It was just a flicker, but I saw it. "I was thinking dinner this week. Just us. I have some fascinating ideas about family collaboration." No. Family collaboration. Giddy. How deliciously ominous. "Well, I do love a good mystery dinner. Does Thursday work for your busy schedule?" "Perfect. I know a place downtown. Very private. Excellent for meaningful conversations." "Meaningful conversations about what?" "My thrilling stamp collection? My weekly bridge club scandals?" "I can hardly contain my excitement," I said, fanning myself with a napkin like a southern belle feigning the vapors. As he glided away to charm more lucrative guests, I caught my reflection again. A silver-haired woman in an understated dress, sitting alone behind a floral fortress. Someone who looked like she clipped coupons and fretted over the heating bill. It was precisely the image I'd spent 2 years cultivating. During the father-daughter dance, I slipped away. In the marble-clad ladies' room, I touched up my lipstick and practiced my harmless elderly widow expression in the mirror. When I returned, Julian was schmoozing the elderly couple at the next table, the Hendersons from my late husband, Richard's old firm. They were lapping up his attention like it was cake. "Mrs. Vance," he said, catching my eye as I sat. "Really looking forward to Thursday." "So am I, dear," I murmured. "So am I." As Clara tossed her bouquet and the evening wound down, I watched my new son-in-law. He worked the room with the efficiency of a practiced con artist, elaborate plans clearly brewing in that handsome head. Too bad for Julian. I'd spent 72 years learning that the most dangerous opponent is always the one everyone underestimates. And this old widow was about to become very, very dangerous. The post-wedding haze lasted exactly 48 hours before the main event began. Clara called daily, her conversations a breathless symphony of newlywed bliss. "He's so thoughtful, Mom. Always thinking ahead about our future. About financial security." Security. The word hung in the air like smoke, signaling a fire. "How lovely, sweetheart. A husband should definitely think about money constantly, especially other people's money." "What do you mean?" "Nothing, dear. Just that financial planning is terribly romantic." Clara missed the sarcasm entirely, which was for the best. Thursday evening arrived with all the festive cheer of a tax audit. I dressed for my part, a simple black dress suggesting respectability without wealth, my mother's pearl earrings, and Richard's old, broken watch, which still looked dignified from a distance. The restaurant was one of those places where the water is described with a French accent, and the waiters eye you with artistic disappointment. Julian was already seated, looking every bit the successful young executive. "Eleanor." He practically levitated from his chair. "You look absolutely radiant." "Thank you, dear. This place is certainly something." And it was. The kind of something that makes you wonder if they charge extra for making you feel inadequate. We ordered wine. He insisted on a bottle with more syllables than my high school diploma, and settled in for what he clearly assumed would be an easy conquest. "So," he began, swirling his wine like a man with delusions of sommelier grandeur, "how are you managing on your own?" "Oh, just brilliantly. 72 years of practice makes most things seem trivial." Of course. But surely it gets overwhelming. That big house, all those decisions." He was fishing with the subtlety of a grenade. "Richard always said I had enough opinions for 3 people. I keep myself thoroughly entertained." He produced a practiced boardroom laugh. "That's wonderful. But seriously, don't you worry about practical matters? Finances, legal issues? People who might take advantage of your generous spirit?" There it was. The real agenda, dressed up in concern and served with overpriced wine. "Should I be worried about something specific, Julian?" "Not worried, exactly. Prepared. You know how complicated things can become for someone in your unique situation." "My unique situation." As if widowhood were a rare medical condition. "And what situation is that, exactly?" He leaned forward, his voice dropping to that confidential tone men use when they're about to explain something to a simple-minded woman. "Well, living alone, making major decisions without guidance, being vulnerable. Vulnerable to people like him, presumably. How thoughtful of you to be so concerned." "I've actually been consulting with my attorney about protective measures for people in situations like yours." "Nay, protective measures. How delightfully patronizing. What kind of protection?" He reached into his briefcase with the flourish of a stage magician. Out came a manila folder, which he placed on the table like a sacred text. "Just some basic paperwork, to safeguard you in case you ever need assistance with important decisions." I opened the folder. Power of attorney. Power of financial oversight. Medical decision-making authority. It was a complete surrender of my autonomy, gift wrapped in loving concern. "This is quite comprehensive. My lawyer specializes in elder care. He's handled many cases like yours." "Cases like mine." I was a case study now. How fascinating. And Clara is aware of this thoughtful initiative. She thinks it's brilliant. Really, Ellen, we just want to ensure you're protected from anyone who might take advantage of your trusting nature. My trusting nature? The boy had done his homework. Protected from whom? Specifically. Oh, you know. Dishonest contractors, questionable investment advisors, relatives who might suddenly become very interested in your welfare. Relatives who might suddenly become interested. The irony was so thick, you could serve it for dessert. How prescient of you to anticipate such problems. It's just common sense. These things are easier to arrange before complications develop. Complications like me maintaining control of my own life. I see, and this needs to be handled quickly. Because timing matters. The longer one waits, the more questions might arise about your capacity. My capacity. He was already laying the groundwork to have me declared incompetent. Well, I said, closing the folder and placing my hands on it. This certainly requires careful consideration. Relief washed over his face. Of course. Take your time. Though my attorney did emphasize that prompt action would be advisable. Prompt action, before I could consult anyone with a functioning brain cell. I'll definitely want to review this with my own legal counsel. His smile flickered. Your own lawyer? Oh yes, I know it seems silly, but I'd feel more comfortable having someone explain it in terms my simple mind can grasp. Eleanor, I really think we should finalize this tonight. Efficiency is key. Efficiently before I realize I'm being robbed. I'm sure your notary will understand that important decisions should be rushed. What? Your notary? You did bring one, didn't you? You seem so prepared for everything else. The mask slipped completely. How did you know about the notary? Lucky guess. You strike me as a man who plans ahead. Julian stared at me, trying to decide if I was genuinely naive or actively resisting. Yours, he said finally. Take all the time you need. But his eyes said something else entirely. They said he was done playing games with the harmless old widow. Too bad for him. The harmless old widow was just getting started. The weekend passed with a deceptive quiet, but I could feel Julian's impatience crackling through the phone lines. Clara called twice, both times casually steering the conversation toward that helpful paperwork Julian showed you. Still mulling it over, sweetheart. He's just trying to help, Mom. He knows so much about legal things. Legal things like theft, I thought, was just another item on his professional development checklist. Monday morning, a call from Julian confirmed my suspicions. Eleanor, it's Julian. I hope you've had time to think. Oh, I've been thinking about very little else. Wonderful. I was hoping we could meet again. I have some additional information that might help clarify things. More sophisticated lies, presumably. I was thinking somewhere more private. Maybe your home? Yeah, my home. Where he could pressure me without witnesses. That sounds fascinating. Wednesday evening. Perfect. Around 7. Wednesday couldn't come soon enough. I spent the intervening days preparing for battle. When Julian arrived, armed with his briefcase and his most trustworthy smile, I was ready. Simple gray dress, minimal jewelry. The perfect costume for a woman, about to spring a very expensive trap. He settled into my living room like he owned it, spreading documents across the coffee table. I brought some case studies. How thoughtful. But before we discuss other people's stories, I have some questions about yours. My story. Yes. Your qualifications for managing other people's lives. Your extensive business experience. In what field, exactly? Nos. His confident expression flickered. Investment management, primarily. For which firm? I work independently now. How delightfully vague. How long have you been advising elderly people on their finances? I wouldn't call it advising, more like protective planning. The room fell silent, except for the ticking of my grandmother's clock. Sylvia, I think there's some misunderstanding. Oh, I understand your intentions perfectly, Julian. What I'm curious about are your methods. Your methods for identifying vulnerable targets, for gaining their trust, for convincing them to sign away their rights. No, I would never. Never what, Julian? Never target elderly widows? Never manipulate them with false concern? Never steal their independence under the guise of protection? His mask was cracking like old paint. You're making serious accusations. I'm making serious observations about a serious predator who made a serious mistake. What mistake? I smiled, channeling every ounce of steel Richard had ever seen in me. Assuming I was just another helpless widow. I think you're confused? I'm not confused at all. I know exactly what you're trying to do. The question is, do you know what I'm about to do? What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that I've been recording this conversation. I'm talking about the private investigator who's been documenting your activities. I'm talking about the attorney who's preparing criminal charges. The color drained from his face. You can't prove anything. I can prove everything. Your financial troubles, your debts, your pattern of targeting elderly women, all of it. Tell me, Julian, how much do you owe in gambling debts? He went very still. How do you know about that? I know everything, including the fact that you're not the first charming young man who has tried to separate me from my assets. The difference is, this time I was prepared. Oh, cool. Prepared how? I stood, my voice a whisper that could cut glass. Prepared to destroy anyone who tries to steal what my husband spent 40 years building. You don't understand. I'm desperate. You need to leave, now, before I call the police. Eleanor, please, we can work something out. The only thing we're working out is whether you leave voluntarily or in handcuffs. Julian gathered his papers with shaking hands, his careful plan crumbling around him. This isn't over. Yes, I said, thinking of Richard's secrets waiting in the basement. It is. After he left, I poured myself a glass of Richard's best wine. Tomorrow, I'd go to the basement and open that old safe. Tomorrow, I'd learn exactly what weapons my husband had left me. Tonight, I would savor the look of sheer panic in Julian Croft's eyes when he realized he'd chosen the wrong widow. Thursday morning, I stood at the top of the basement stairs, Richard's key in my hand. For 2 years I'd avoided this, too deep in grief to face whatever secrets he'd left behind. Julian Croft had given me an excellent reason to find my courage. The basement smelled of old paper and Richard's cologne. His desk sat just as he'd left it. The safe was hidden behind a concrete-paneled wall I'd never noticed. Richard had always been cleverer than he let on. Inside, I found documents that made my hands shake. Bank statements for accounts I never knew existed, investment records spanning decades, and at the very bottom, a letter in Richard's familiar script. My dearest Eleanor, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and someone is trying to take advantage of your generous heart. I'm sorry I never told you about the money. $33 million, properly protected and completely yours. I lived modestly so we could die wealthy, and I hid our wealth so you'd be safe from predators. Exactly like whoever drove you to open this safe. $33 data. I sat down heavily in Richard's old chair, the numbers swimming before my eyes. The letter continued. There's a business card in this envelope for Diane Mercer. She's handled everything since I got sick. She knows what threats you might face and has instructions to help you fight back. Use every penny. Make them regret the day they decided to mess with my wife. I found Diane's card and called immediately. Mercer Law Office. This is Eleanor Vance. I believe my husband, Richard, arranged for you to assist me. May I? There was a pause. Mrs. Vance, I've been waiting 2 years for your call. Can you come in today? Diane Mercer's office was modern and bright. She was sharp-eyed, with a handshake that could crack walnuts. Eleanor, please sit. Richard told me this day might come. She spread documents across her desk. Your husband was remarkably prescient. He predicted someone would approach you, probably through family, trying to gain control of what they assumed were modest assets. But they're not modest. No, they're not. $33 million, completely protected in an irrevocable trust. You control everything, but no one else can access it, even if they somehow gained power of attorney. None. Even if I'd signed Julian's papers. Even then, Richard designed this to protect you from exactly that kind of manipulation. I leaned back, feeling the fog of the last 2 years begin to lift. So, Julian can't touch any of it. He can't touch a penny. More importantly, you now have the resources to make sure he never tries this again. Diane smiled, a predatory glint in her eyes. We're going to destroy him so thoroughly that he'll spend the rest of his life warning other predators about the dangers of underestimating widows. How? Criminal charges for attempted fraud, civil suits. We're going to investigate every financial transaction he's made for the past 5 years. We'll find where his money came from, where it went, and who else he owes. We'll expose his entire operation. Operation? Oh yes. Men like Julian don't work alone. We're going to find them all. I thought of Clara, her naivete, her inevitable tears. What happens to my daughter's marriage? That's up to Clara. But she'll make her decision with complete information, not lies. I gathered the trust documents, feeling as if I were holding lightning. When do we start? We already have. The moment you walked into my office, Julian Croft became the target, not the hunter. That evening, Clara called. Mom, Julian seems really upset. He won't tell me what happened at your meeting. We had a fascinating conversation about his plans for my future, the kind that assume I'm too stupid to protect myself. Mom, he's just trying to help. Sweetheart, there are things about your husband you don't know. Things about our family finances you don't know. Tomorrow, I think it's time you learn the truth. Any? What truth? The truth about what your father really left me, and the truth about what I'm going to do to anyone who tries to steal it. The silence on the other end was deafening. Mom, you're scaring me. Good, I said. It's about time someone in this family was properly scared. Julian Croft thought he was hunting a helpless widow. He was about to discover he'd walked into the lair of a very wealthy, very angry dragon. And dragons don't negotiate with thieves. They incinerate them. Friday morning brought a call from Diane. I found a prosecutor who specializes in elder fraud. She wants to meet you today. 2. That afternoon, in the district attorney's office, I met Agent Miller, a sharp-eyed woman who looked like she ate insurance scams for breakfast. I walked her through every conversation, every lie Julian had fed me. Classic pattern, she said, making notes. Family connection, financial pressure, urgency. He's done this before. This is his profession. So what do we do? We set a trap, she said. Make him think he's won, then document everything he does next. You'll call him, say you've reconsidered, and want to sign the papers. We record everything. Then we arrest him the moment he brings a notary to witness it. Now, I smiled, thinking of Julian's desperation. When do we spring this trap? Monday, she said. That gives us the weekend to prepare. On Sunday, Clara arrived, worried and confused. Mom, Julian keeps asking about Dad's finances, about hidden accounts. What did you tell him? That I don't know anything. Mom, why is he so interested? I looked at my daughter, her face a mask of trust and love. Because he needs money more desperately than you realize. Desperately enough to steal it from his wife's mother. She stared at me. You really think he's trying to steal from you? I know he is. The question is, are you ready to see the proof? The kind that will destroy your marriage but save your mother. Yeah. Clara was quiet for a long time. Finally, she nodded. Show me. Monday morning, I delivered the performance of a lifetime. Julian, it's Eleanor. I've been thinking. I think you're right. I do need protection. I'd like to move forward with those papers. The relief in his voice was a physical thing. That's wonderful, Eleanor. When would be convenient? As soon as possible. This afternoon. Perfect. I'll bring my notary. We'll get everything signed, and you'll be completely protected. After I hung up, Diane, who had been monitoring the call, nodded. He took the bait. Now we wait for him to hang himself. At exactly 3:00 p.m., Julian arrived with his briefcase, his notary, and his most trustworthy smile. Hidden cameras captured it all, as he spread the documents on my coffee table. Eleanor, I can't tell you how relieved I am. I realized you were right, I said, my voice trembling slightly. An old woman like me needs guidance. Exactly. Now, these papers give Clara and me the authority to protect your interests. Financial decisions, medical choices, living arrangements, everything. Ida, and now, I Kadamidire, at day. Living arrangements. He was already planning to warehouse me somewhere. I picked up the pen. Marcus, there's something I should mention. What's that? I think there might be more money than you realize. Hidden investments, perhaps. His eyes lit up. How much more money, Eleanor? The greed was naked, the desperation palpable. Well, I said, setting down the pen without signing the final page. That's where things get interesting. What do you mean? I smiled, thinking of $33 million and the perfect trap. I mean, you're under arrest, Julian. Police emerged from their hiding places as Julian's face went white with shock. You can't. I can, and I did. And now you're going to learn what happens to predators who hunt the wrong prey. As they led him away in handcuffs, his shouts about entrapment echoed through the house. But all I heard was the sound of justice being served with a $33 million side of revenge. The news broke that evening. Local businessman arrested in elder fraud sting. Julian's perp walk played on a loop. Clara called, sobbing. Mom, what have you done? I've protected myself from your husband. But this will destroy him. Good. That was the point. She arrived an hour later, eyes red. I sat her down and played the recording. Every greedy word, every calculated lie. He was going to put me in a nursing home, sweetheart. He was going to steal everything your father left me. I showed her the financial records Diane had uncovered, the gambling debts, the fake businesses, the systematic targeting of other widows. She stared at the evidence, her face cycling through denial, anger, and finally, heartbreak. What am I supposed to do now? Whatever you want. But you'll do it with the truth, not with lies. Lying. The next day, Julian's father arrived, pompous and furious. You've destroyed my son's life over a misunderstanding. I've exposed your son's criminal behavior. The recordings don't lie. This is vindictive, cruel. This is justice. Your son chose to prey on elderly women. Now he gets to experience the consequences. At the bail hearing, the judge was not impressed. Mr. Croft, the evidence suggests a systematic attempt to defraud an elderly family member. Bail is set at $500,000. Money Julian didn't have. He would wait for his trial in jail. A few days later, Diane brought an update. The FBI is interested. They think he's connected to a multi-state elder fraud ring. If they can flip Julian, they might bring down the entire network. The following week, Clara filed for divorce. I can't stay married to someone who tried to rob my own mother, she told her lawyer. She moved into an apartment near mine, changed by the ordeal, stronger, warier, wiser. I feel so stupid, she said one evening. You trusted someone you loved. That's not stupid. It's human. How did you know he was lying? I didn't, at first. But your father left me resources, tools to fight back. What kind of resources? I looked at my daughter, finally ready for the truth. The kind that turn helpless widows into very dangerous enemies. The trial began in September. The evidence was overwhelming, the recordings damning. The jury deliberated for 47 minutes. Guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge looked down at Julian with contempt. Mr. Croft, you systematically targeted the vulnerable, exploited family relationships and showed no remorse. The court sentences you to 18 years in federal prison. 18 years. As they led him away, he looked at me with pure hatred. This isn't over, old woman. I smiled sweetly. Yes, it is. After the trial, Diane and I celebrated at the same restaurant where Julian had first tried to deceive me. You've become something of a legend in elder law circles, she said, raising her glass. The widow who fought back and won. Good. No one should suffer what Julian planned for me. What's next for you? I thought about the other victims, about Richard's trust, and the power it gave me. Next, I said, I make sure this never happens to anyone else, by using every resource at my disposal to hunt down predators before they find their next victim. Diane smiled. That sounds expensive. I can afford it. That night, I sat in my kitchen, rereading Richard's letter. He had given me more than money. He had given me permission to be dangerous. Marcus Thornfield had learned too late that some widows bite back, and some bites are fatal. The aftermath of Julian's conviction brought unexpected visitors. His mother, Beatrice, arrived one morning, dripping desperation disguised as dignity. Eleanor, we need to discuss this unfortunate situation. Come in, Beatrice. I was wondering when you'd show up. She swept into my living room. This vendetta against Julian has gone too far. Vendetta? Is that what we're calling prosecuting criminals now? Your son systematically targeted elderly women for years. This wasn't a mistake. It was his business model. And her mask of superiority slipped. The family is suffering because of your actions. The family is suffering because of Julian's crimes. We're losing everything. The house, the business, our reputation. And there it was. Not concern for Julian, but for their own social standing. How tragic. I'm sure that the women he robbed would be devastated to hear about your inconvenience. Her composure cracked. What do you want from us? Nothing. I already got what I wanted. Justice. There must be something. Money? No. I'm saying. I studied her desperate face. Actually, there is one thing you can do. Hope flickered in her eyes. Disappear. Move away. Change your name. And ensure no one in your family ever targets another elderly person again. She left without another word, her dignity in tatters. The next week, a parade of Julian's associates tried to bargain their way out of prosecution. I sent them all to Diane and the FBI. You're building quite a reputation, Diane observed during one of our weekly meetings. Word is that targeting you was Julian's fatal mistake. Good. Fear is an excellent deterrent. The federal prosecutor's case expanded. 37 confirmed victims. Over $12 million in damages. Can we get their money back? I asked. Most of it, Diane said. Julian's personal assets were being liquidated. The house, cars, jewelry. It will all be distributed among his victims. My share goes to the others, I said. I can spare it. A few days later, Diane called, her voice excited. Sylvia, we just got a break in the federal case. Julian is cooperating. What's he telling them? Everything. Names, methods, locations. The entire elder fraud network is about to collapse. In exchange for a reduced sentence? He'll still do significant time. Probably 8 to 10 years. 8 years. He would be in his early 40s when he got out, his life defined by his crimes. That's acceptable, I said. There was more. The federal prosecutor wanted to meet with me about creating a victim advocacy program, using my case as a model. A program funded by federal grants, asset forfeiture, and private donations. They were asking me to bankroll justice for elder fraud victims. The startup costs were around $2 million, with annual operations near $5 million. A significant sum, but less than I earned in investment income. It was a war chest. Richard's war chest. Where do I sign? I asked. I just declared war on a multi-billion-dollar criminal industry. That evening, Clara and I had dinner. Mom, are you sure about spending this much on strangers? They're not strangers, Clara. They're people who were targeted by predators like your ex-husband. Your father built this wealth to protect people. I'm finally using it the way he intended. The program launched 3 months later with spectacular results. Within the first month, we'd triggered arrests in 12 states. The most satisfying call came from Agent Miller. Eleanor, We just arrested Julian's former mentor, the man who taught him everything. What's his name? William Croft. Diak. Julian's uncle. The family business was literally stealing from the elderly. He'd been at it for decades, with over 100 victims. He was facing life in prison. He wants to make a deal, she continued. Full cooperation in exchange for a reduced sentence. I thought about justice versus revenge. Take the deal, but make sure he serves at least 15 years. Within 6 months, the information from William Croft had led to arrests in 23 states. The criminal organizations that had preyed on the elderly for decades were collapsing. You've become the most feared woman in elder fraud circles, Diane told me. They warn each other about targeting widows because of the Eleanor Vance situation. What's an Eleanor Vance situation? Complete destruction of their criminal enterprise, federal prosecution, and asset forfeiture that leaves them bankrupt. Perfect. That evening, I sat in my garden, reading reports. We'd recovered over $40 for fraud victims. We'd sent dozens of predators to prison. We'd sent a message. The phone rang. It was Clara. Mom, turn on the news. A reporter stood outside the federal courthouse. In a stunning development, authorities have arrested the entire leadership of what they're calling the largest elder fraud network in U.S. history. The investigation, funded by a private donor who wishes to remain anonymous, has resulted in charges against 43 individuals. Mom, are you watching? I'm watching. How does it feel? It feels, I said, like your father's money is being used exactly the way he intended, to turn helpless widows into very dangerous enemies of people who prey on the vulnerable. Julian Croft had made the most expensive mistake in the history of elder fraud. He had awakened something in me I didn't know existed, the absolute determination to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. Robert had left me $33 to stay safe. I had used it to make the world safer for everyone. 2 years after Julian's conviction, I sat in my kitchen reading a letter from his first victim, an elderly teacher. The Federal Asset Recovery Program had returned everything he'd stolen from her. Thank you, she wrote, for showing me that we don't have to be victims. The doorbell rang. It was Agent Miller, holding a bottle of champagne. Eleanor, we need to celebrate the complete destruction of the network that started with your case. Final numbers: 67 arrests, 49 convictions. Over $80 million recovered for victims. And Julian's associates? All convicted. Richard got 12 years. The lawyers were disbarred and got prison time. And Julian himself? Still in federal prison. Still facing the reality that his choices destroyed his life. I poured 2 cups of coffee. Any regrets? Eleanor, Agent Miller said, your case changed how federal law enforcement approaches elder fraud. Before you, we treated these as individual crimes. Now we recognize them as organized criminal enterprises. Oh, Julian accidentally created the most effective elder protection program in American history. I laughed, savoring the irony. He really did pick the wrong widow. Later, I called Clara. Mom, you realize you've become legendary, right? I overheard 2 women in the grocery store talking about the widow who fought back like you were a superhero. I'm hardly a superhero. You are to them. You proved elderly people don't have to be victims. I had advantages. You had Richard's money, yes. But you also had the courage to fight back when everyone expected you to surrender. Anthony. That evening, the phone rang again. It was Diane. Eleanor, the president's office called. They want to nominate you for the Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor in the country, for protecting myself from my daughter's ex-husband. That seems excessive. It's not excessive for creating a program that has protected thousands of elderly Americans. Will it require public appearances? Probably. The White House ceremony, media interviews. Then I'll do it. If my visibility helps other victims find the courage to fight back, it's worth it. There's one more thing. They want Clara to attend the ceremony. Because her courage in choosing justice over comfortable lies is part of what made this possible. And soon, I hung up, realizing Julian had given me the greatest gift imaginable, a purpose that matched my resources and a mission that honored Richard's memory. The Medal of Freedom ceremony was 6 months away. It was going to be a very productive 6 months. The White House ceremony took place on a crisp October morning. As the president placed the medal around my neck, he spoke of extraordinary contributions to criminal justice. I thought of Julian in his cell, watching and realizing the full scope of his catastrophic mistake. At the podium, I looked directly into the television cameras. 2 years ago, I was a widow trying to live quietly. I learned that trouble doesn't avoid you just because you're polite to it. When someone tried to steal my independence, I discovered the best defense is becoming a more dangerous predator yourself. The applause was thunderous. This medal belongs to every elderly person who's ever been told they're too confused to manage their own lives. To anyone who preys on the elderly, I have a message. We are watching. We are organized. We are well-funded. And we are organized. We are well-funded. And we are very, very angry. Find a different line of work. The media attention was extraordinary. Elder fraud reports dropped 60% nationally. Criminal networks now warned against the Eleanor Vance situation. I had become a threat they warned each other about. Then came the final act. Diane called. Sylvia, Congress wants you to testify about creating a permanent federal program based on our model. And Marcus's parole hearing is scheduled for the same week. Perfect. While I was testifying about protecting the elderly, Julian would be begging for a freedom he didn't deserve. At the Senate hearing, I wore my best armor, a navy suit and the diamond earrings Richard gave me for our 40th anniversary. I became an expert by refusing to be a victim, I told the senators. My husband left me resources, but more importantly, he left me permission to be dangerous to people who prey on the vulnerable. I recommended that elder fraud be made a federal crime, punishable by life in prison. Stealing an elderly person's independence is a life sentence for the victim. The punishment should match the crime. 2 days later, I faced Julian across a small, grim room. He looked older, thinner, diminished. After his lawyer's plea, it was my turn. Members of the board 5 years ago, Julian Thornfield targeted me because he thought I was a helpless widow. He was catastrophically wrong. I laid out the facts, including the $33 he'd been trying to steal. The real question is whether he has learned anything. I looked directly at Julian. Have you learned that elderly people can fight back? He couldn't resist. I learned that some people have more money than they deserve, he snarled. The room fell silent. And that, I concluded, is why Mr. Croft should serve his full sentence. He is not rehabilitated. He is just angry that his victim had bigger teeth. Parole was denied. 3 more years. As they led him away, he looked at me one last time. This isn't over. I smiled sweetly. Yes, it is. Outside, I found Clara waiting. How does it feel, Mom? Complete. Julian was staying in prison. The federal program was becoming permanent. Elderly people across the country were safer because one predator picked the wrong widow. Are you happy with how this all turned out? She asked on the drive home. I'm proud, I said. I'm satisfied. I'm grateful your father gave me the tools to fight back. And Julian, he gave me the greatest gift of all. He tried to steal my independence and accidentally gave me a mission to protect everyone's. And I do, determinedly. The circle was complete. The war was over. And somewhere in a federal prison, Julian Croft was learning that some mistakes last forever. Robert's $33 million had bought the most expensive lesson in American criminal history. Never, ever underestimate a widow. Some lessons are worth every penny. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to my channel and feel free to share your own story in the comments. Your voice matters.